Following is a Sketch Media production.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Easewell Podcast. I'm Dr. Jon, and today I have with me the lovely Mandy Morris. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jon. I appreciate it.
Yeah, just to dive in a little bit, so I'm going to kind of talk about you, brag on you here. So I know you are a licensed professional counselor. You are an EMDR clinician, which we'll talk about here in a bit. You're an executive psych coach,
Yep.
an author, and you have your own app. So quite the qualifications here. So
my hands in a lot of projects.
Yeah, it seems like it. So we will dive all into that as we go along today. But I just kind of want to start how you got into this career path. Is it something that you always knew you wanted to do, or is it something you had this epiphany halfway through your life and you're like, I need to do this, it's calling me? So if you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure, yeah. I actually went to college to be an athletic trainer, so which you may appreciate with your profession. I want to be the person who ran out on the field and like popped the shoulder back in place and stuff. I was a big athlete throughout my whole life, and I was told I would be good at that. You should do that. So I was like, okay, that sounds fun. Yeah. But then in college, I had started with my own therapist for the first time, and that was a wonderful experience. But I'd also, and to this day, I don't even remember how I got started in volunteering with this group, but I started volunteering at a crisis resource center, and I was a lay counselor. Okay. And so I got to sit with the women and just be there for them, essentially. And I loved it. I fell in love with it. So to the point where I was like, do I even really want to do this athletic training thing anymore? And sports had, at that point in my life, become such a job to me that I was falling out of love with it because I got so super serious.
Lost that passion.
Yeah. And I was always very hard on myself. And so aside from that, I've always loved learning about the brain and neuroscience. And as I was reflecting and thinking through all of that, I remember calling my parents one day and telling them that I wanted to change my major from athletic training to psychology. I wanted to be a therapist, and they're like, "Are you sure?"
I was gonna say, how'd they take that?
No, they were cautiously supportive, for sure, and knowing that what that would mean to make that switch. But looking back on my life, I think I've been a mini therapist all along and never knew it. I went to a really small private school growing up, and we were given these senior superlatives. And I was like, I want the one that's the most athletic, or the one with the best whatever. And I was so pissed when I got mine because it was most caring. And I'm like, oh my God, everybody's caring.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Anyway,
generic
so, but
almost, yes.
Generic, but really I've always had a heart for helping people. And so that's kind of how I transitioned into that.
I love that. Gotcha. So to dive in a little bit more about your qualifications, so what actually is an EMDR?
So EMDR.
EMDR.
Yeah.
So sorry.
No, it's a incredibly irritating long name with this weird acronym. But EMDR it stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing.
Okay.
It is one of the most renowned trauma therapies. I use it for a lot of different things. It's mainly used for trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's been around since the 80s, 90s, but it's really become more mainstream, I would say, in the last decade or so.
Okay, and you see some pretty good results with it with your
Great
clients?
results and very quick results. So it's not like typical psychotherapy. There's actually not a lot of talking involved in it. So
that's interesting because you think you would schedule someone like yourself.
Yeah.
There'd be a lot of talking, hopefully. So
Yeah.
Say, hey, we're not going to be talking so much. I think somebody would be like,
well, but it makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I say often to my therapy clients or even my entrepreneurs and executives is, you could have thought your way out of your problems, you would have by now. You can't logic your way out of some things. You can't intellect your way out of some things. That's because some of our issues are neurological. They come from these fight or flight system responses that go way deeper than this upper level part of our brain. And what EMDR does is it accesses those responses that we don't like. Maybe it's from anxiety or depression or, unwanted thoughts and images and things that come up, whatever it may be. And we sort of bring that up And then we incorporate something called bilateral stimulation, which is just another long name for left and right side of the brain.
Sure.
Whether that is through eye movements, left to right, whether that's through, if you come to my office, you will hold these TheraTappers and they just pulse in your hand, left to right. If we're virtual, we might do tapping like this.
Sure.
And that just allows the brain to make the connections it needs to make to resolve the issue, to desensitize you to whatever the experiences were that have created these symptoms now. Francine Shapiro, she's the psychologist who founded EMDR in the 80s. She was on a walk and she was having some very distressing thoughts come up. And on her walk, as she was looking left to right at the trees, she noticed that her thoughts got less and less distressing. And so as a researcher and a psychologist, she looked into that. Yeah. We have so much evidence on the fact that you do get results. This does work. We still don't know exactly all of why, but we do know that through the alternating left and right side of the brain, it mimics a similar process that happens in REM sleep cycle where your mind organizes information. If you ever see someone in rapid eye movement, while their eyes are closed, they're still moving fast back and forth, right? This is a similar process, only you're fully awake and in control, but it allows your mind to organize the information so it gets out of the fight or flight system and stored in the correct part of the brain.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
As you know, REM is like the most important part of the sleep cycle. So
it is,
bring certain things and make that connection. That's huge.
Yeah.
And then obviously dealing with the nervous system. That's what we deal with as chiropractors.
Exactly.
So I understand the importance of that. And how much of a role it plays in day to day, memories, feelings, all that.
Yep. Well, and that's a big part of EMDR as well is that we are bringing up these thoughts and feelings, but we're targeting where you feel them in your body. So we're connecting those experiences to the visceral sensations that you have in your body. And what it does is it then takes that out of the nervous system. So wherever you get those pains or those physical manifestations of whatever is going on, it then clears that out as well.
Very cool.
So it's all connected. Yeah.
Very nice. All right. So we're going to dive in a little bit more of just what your clients deal with on a regular basis. So I know I read on your website, you deal with a lot of stress, trauma, anxiety, depression, personal growth even. So say someone's coming into your office for the first time, how's that initial approach work? Just briefly, just kind of how do you approach it, questions, things that to bring things out in them?
Well, first, I'll always remind them that they are the brave ones because not a lot of people ask for help.
Sure, and showing up.
Yeah, for showing up. I'm a big believer that healthy, successful people know how to ask for help. And
that's a powerful statement.
Yeah,
very true.
It is. I don't know anybody who got anywhere without someone else.
Sure.
And we need others to do that. And so I like to acknowledge that first, and then just talking about what brings them in and why now. Usually there's some sort of catalyst that made them reach out now. And I think that's an important piece of it. And we talk through what their goals are, what they're wanting to get out of therapy. How will you know this was worth it for you? And from there, I tend to just get a history on all the things that have led up to the issues that they're having now that they're wanting to get resolved.
Sure.
I need to figure out, when did these problems begin? How did their mind get wired the way it's wired now, so that we can then go in and sort of do the rewiring and the programming where we need to.
That makes sense. Yeah, and those are issues that pretty much everyone's dealing with, whether they want to look themselves in the mirror and admit it all the time. So during COVID, obviously things changed a lot with people, especially their mental health. And I was going to ask you, especially people who were in the office and then started working from home, did you see a shift in some of your clients' mental health, how they were coping with it, how they sort of viewed certain things afterwards?
The pandemic really took a toll on everybody for a lot of reasons, but we saw domestic violence and substance abuse skyrocket at like a 500% increase. Depression and anxiety just in that year alone went up 20-30%. We were seeing these rapid increase in rates and all these different mental health issues. And loneliness was a big part of that. The isolation. Well before the pandemic, there was already research out on how loneliness is one of the number one causes of early death, because of the ramifications of that. And so between that and uncertainty and how, we're wired to survive, and when our world's blowing up and when things are uncertain, we start living off of our survival mechanisms. And so, I think of like cortisol going up, adrenaline going up, all these things that have ramifications for mental and emotional well-being. And as you will know as a doctor, then plays into all the physical ailments that come along with it because of the mind-body connection. So it really took a toll on everybody.
Yeah, so you saw a lot of things that you normally saw just sort of
amplified.
There you go. Yeah. And we see patients who work from home now, and just even them coming into our office, it's like a breath of fresh air to like come in, greet the front desk, chat with me for 5 or 10 minutes. So not having any of that for multiple years. So we're going to kind of dive into business owners now. So I know you do executive psychology coach, right?
Yeah.
Did I say that correctly?
You did,
Yeah. And you, I think on your website, you mentioned about 60% of business owners are pretty stressed out, worn out.
Sure.
So say a business owner came to you, how would you help them cope, and how would you help them get on the right track, get their business running the way that they should again?
It's a very similar process, just with those clients. Our goals may look a little different, but it's all going to go back to something going on within themselves. I know for entrepreneurs, business owners, executives, that's a very lonely space to be in.
Yep.
They're all high achievers anyway. So put the most pressure on themselves. And that's another area where that, if you could have thought your way out of your problems, you would have by now. I mean, we're talking like high achievers here. They're smart individuals, logical. This is bringing what's subconscious conscious. And what I will dive into with them is really trying to figure out what is it that you believe about you that keeps you stuck. And because we operate out of our belief systems. Yep. For instance, a few clients of mine I can think of in particular who maybe weren't able to increase their revenue. They keep getting stuck, and what am I doing wrong? And I'm not progressing my business. I'm not getting to the next level. Well, after doing some digging on the surface, what we see is anxiety, maybe some depression,
self-doubt, I'm sure.
Self-doubt, yep. As high achievers, you keep going, but maybe there's self-sabotaging behavior like procrastination, avoiding, maybe not getting the credit card from the client, or not having good boundaries around something. So all these things that they know they need to be doing, but there's this pull, this force that keeps you from doing it, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, a couple of these clients that I'm thinking of, because it's a common theme as we kind of pull back the layers and do some digging. Turns out one of the biggest beliefs that comes up for people is a fear of I'm a failure, or a feeling of I'm a failure.
Yeah.
And so because our mind can't hold two conflicting beliefs, your mind's going to find evidence for what you believe in. And this isn't like conscious thing that you go around thinking I'm a failure, but it's just in these moments, it's this feeling of I'm afraid to, what if people find out that I'm really not that great?
That's the point I was going to make. Because a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, self-starters, they feel like they always have to be perfect.
Right.
And if they do fail, they don't want anyone to see it or know about it. They kind of want to deal with it off to the side because they have this image, this perception, and that's something that's hard to swallow sometimes. For
sure. Well, and that fear of failure can then go into either not wanting to be a failure, or what does it mean if you fail? Does it mean I'm not good enough? Does it mean that I'm not important, or that I'm not as much worth and value as I thought I was? Whatever that belief is underneath, and that's the thing that I try to get to the root of, and where I have begun to integrate EMDR to the executive entrepreneur leadership world, because that's the unstuck tool for me. Is once we figured out that belief and we can use EMDR, since this is a neurological process, then we can get results within a session around it. So what used to take a year and a half to 2 years of traditional talk therapy, EMDR, whether it's trauma, complex trauma, single incident traumas, or even just working through these negative beliefs that have come up because of other life experiences, anywhere from like 5 to 15 sessions is all you need.
That's crazy. And that's also great, because today's day and age, everybody wants results fast. You tell them something, nobody wants to put in the work for anything. I mean, you could talk about exercise, nutrition, mental health. Everyone's like, so you can do this in 5 visits? What's that drug that everyone's taking now to lose weight? Ozempic.
Ozempic,
Yeah, it's like the hottest drug on the market, because people just
sure.
pop a pill and lose 20 pounds.
Sure.
So it's just one of those things. You start getting results in 3 or 4 visits.
Yeah, well, and it makes sense because it's not a talk therapy, and talk therapy works. I mean, I do talk therapy myself. You know, I integrate all these things, so it's not a knock against that. But there are some things that aren't upper level functioning part of the brain, and so if you're using a tool that only addresses that, you're still going to get there. It's just going to take a lot longer. But a tool like EMDR, that's a neurological process. Well, we're just going to get it done.
All right, we'll kind of change course here a little bit and just switch demographic a little bit. We're going to talk about children a little bit. So a study I found, 1/3 of students in this study, ages 12 to 17, received mental health treatment in 2023. That's about 8 million kids. So my question to you is, why do you think we're seeing this trend?
Yeah, that's a startling statistic.
Yeah, isn't it? When I read that, I was like, wow, I have to talk about this.
Yeah. And I think if you were to ask parents, they would be like, yeah, I see it. And teachers are like, yeah, I see it in kids.
Sure.
So I think there's a lot of things that go into that. But so I think some of that carries on from the pandemic.
That's what I was going to mention. Yeah. Especially the ones who were just starting school, or maybe like an 8th grader who's about to go into high school and, and then jumps in their junior year out of nowhere, and high school's almost over,
Yep. Well, yeah. So all of that. And let's take away, prior to the pandemic. So, normal things that normally affect children's and teen and adolescents' mental health. It could be things going on in the home. It could be, maybe they're have a certain type of personality that is maybe more sensitive to things, so they have more anxiety, or maybe there's other genetic issues going on. So we have these sort of standard things that happen. On top of have there been any bullying experiences, or parents going through a divorce, or whatever it may be. So then add the pandemic on top of that. Now we're isolated and alone. And then let's add social media to this. I can't imagine, I don't know about you, Jon, I can't imagine growing up in this time where you are under a spotlight and your self-esteem and value is completely connected to how many likes you get, to what people are doing that you're not doing, and you see your friends hanging out and you're not with them. So much goes into social media and young people's mental health.
Yeah, for sure. My niece, even, I saw her around Christmas, and she literally was just not crying, but tearing up because she posted something and didn't get as many likes as she thought it would. And she just kind of was off the rest of the day. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. And this happens to kids all around the world every day.
It does. Well, and social media is designed, there's so much research on this, is designed to keep you addicted to it.
Of course.
And so let's add that with your self-esteem and value. Sure. So now I'm getting all my self-esteem and worth from what's happening on social media or what isn't happening on social media, but yet I can't stop doing it because I'm addicted to it. Yeah. It's this vicious cycle.
Different times. I mean, I talk with people my age and just saying how we grew up, it was just different. Not that kids don't go outside anymore and stuff, but that's all we had to do. You had to be creative. You didn't have technology to kind of keep your focus on everything. You had to go outside, ride your bike, make up games. Right. So that just changes your mind, the way you think about things, approach things. You're not worried about other people and things like that, and you're not taking in as much information, whether it be true or not. Who knows these days with social media? So again, and just a child's brain, the way it's changing constantly, they're growing, feelings, all that. Again, can't even imagine. But yeah, the good part of this, though, I think, is that I don't know whether it's the parents or kids going to their parents, but the fact that kids are starting at that age, hopefully they see results, and it encourages them to carry that forward into adulthood, where unfortunately it gets a lot harder.
For sure, yeah.
So at the same time, I was a little shocked by that number, but also encouraged at the same time. So which I thought was pretty cool.
Absolutely.
So now let's talk about your app, So Free.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that. I know you're excited about that.
This is a project that is dear to my heart. So I'll give you a little background as to how it even came up. But a few years ago, I was on a run one day, so I do a lot of thinking and get into my creative thoughts and stuff. But I was like, why haven't we paired or integrated bilateral stimulation? So I talked about that with use in EMDR.
You did.
But when we're not targeting like a traumatic memory or something like that, bilateral stimulation in of itself makes the parasympathetic nervous system come online, the nervous system that helps you relax. So as you know, if you go to the doctor's office and if your arms or legs are crossed over your midline, you're taking your blood pressure, they'll make you uncross it.
Correct.
Right. Because the change in the heart rate.
Yep.
And so one of the techniques we will use to help people regulate before we even start processing trauma with EMDR is to incorporate various relaxation techniques with bilateral stimulation for clients to do on their own, whether that's just tapping on their own bilaterally or on their legs. Walking's bilateral. Parents who are holding their babies who naturally sway back and forth, that's bilateral. It's a natural self-soothing mechanism that we have. So I was like, why hasn't this been paired with our technology that we have? And so I presented the idea to my brother, and he is he's a co-founder of So Free and CTO, and he is amazing in the technology space. I know very little about any of that.
You have all the brains behind as far as like what you want the app to be, and he's going to be the one who sort of implements all that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, through coding and developing, and I mean, he's really made this come to life in a way that I never even dreamed it could be. Yeah. And so essentially what So Free does is it detects your stress for you and then resets your nervous system using bilateral stimulation in under 2 minutes.
Do you get to choose the technique you want to use?
So if you have a wearable like a watch, I have my watch on right here, and you have the app on your phone, we have a patent pending on the technology where we use 8 different biometrics to detect your stress for you using your wearable. And it'll alert you, be like, Dr. Jon, stress is up. It's time. And so do you want to start a BLS session? And you'll have 3 options. You can do So Free here, which is put in your AirPods or earbuds, and it'll do audio tones left and right at the hertz frequencies that are needed for that relaxed state. Or you can do So Free feel, which is vibrations. So vibrations from the side of your body that has the watch to the side of your body that has the phone. And so you can be super discreet with either of those. No one even has to know that you're using them.
I was going to say, nobody would even know.
No one would even know. You can be in a meeting and doing it. And if you don't have either of those, or you don't have a wearable, you can still use the app. You will just have to put it on yourself. So essentially, you would then open the app on your phone, and then through bilateral visualization, so tracking with your eyes left to right with the visual that we have, it'll also create the same effect.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Can you download it now?
So we are dying for people to go to getsofree.com and get on our mailing list to be a part of the beta launch. This week, we're releasing the alpha for all of us to start testing. And then
perfect timing to do that.
Yeah, I know. And then in about a month, we'll start the beta, and we'll have awesome perks for people who want to be a part of this for us. Use it, help us break it, help us refine it, and then we really hope to launch it.
Yeah, I think that's
year.
Great, especially 2 minutes. I mean, because everyone always argues, I don't have time that everybody always talks about.
Right.
So you can't 2 minutes for your mental health to calm you down. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Well, and we're hoping to have a proactive, view on or approach to this, because how many times do you go throughout the day completely stressed and not even realizing it?
A lot.
all the time. And then that has huge ramifications for your mental, emotional, physical well-being.
Yep.
And so if we can help people like catch it, we can catch it for you, and you can then become more aware of your own body, and then we can use this mechanism to help reset your nervous system very quickly.
Sure.
We're not going to go around projecting our stress onto everybody all day long, you know?
Well, very cool. That's awesome. Congratulations to you. Can't wait till I can download it on my phone and use it. Really?
Yeah, I can't wait for you to be a part of the process.
Seriously, I can't wait. That sounds literally right up my alley. Just something to like decompress me if I'm having like a bad morning or something. Just take 2 minutes and.
So anyone who wants to be a part of that,
they'll line up. I'm telling you. So very nice.
Thank you.
All right. So next thing, something I've just read and kind of heard in the past. I don't know if the actual percentage is exact, but I always hear this number: 75% of what people worry about most of the time never even happens. So what are some pointers to help people worry less and be more present? This is something I always try to work on. I'm always thinking about the next step, what's going to happen next week, next year. How do I plan for this? And sometimes it'll ruin your day because your anxiety gets going, you get all worked up. So I try to work on being just more in the moment and the present. So what are some pointers for people who deal with that on like a daily basis?
Sure. You want to do an exercise together?
Sure. I hope I can pass. We'll see.
So you can pick something super benign. It doesn't have to be anything big, but just like what would be something that you would typically worry about?
Work.
Okay. and the fear is what?
staying busy, like patients in the door. I mean, you got to keep it up. If you're not getting people in the door, you're not keeping your doors open. So yeah, just constantly thinking of ways to market and keep everything going. So that's something that really never ends, I guess you could
say. So if you go through slow seasons,
yes,
then that fear is starting to come to life, what would you do?
We sit down and brainstorm and do podcasts and bump up our Instagram and things of that nature. We're just thinking events we can do, things like that. So we try to tackle it.
Yeah. So you would brainstorm, you would, collectively get together and you would figure out ways to help people to further your business so you can have bigger impact.
Correct.
Okay. And so if that fear happened, it was slow, you started doing that, do you believe you would survive that?
Yes, I would survive.
Okay. When that fear comes up right now, what's the first thing you have to remind yourself?
That I'll survive.
Yeah. And that you already have a plan in place.
That's true.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. You survive. I have a plan in place. So it's not, you want to acknowledge fears that you have. We have real fears.
Yes.
Our mind is always searching for the threat. I mean, that's part of the survival mechanism in our brain.
Yeah.
It's not about not worrying or not fearing. That's like, don't think of the purple elephant. You're going to think of the purple elephant.
Always.
Right. But it's, what's my plan if that happens, and will I survive it? And then when that fear comes up is it time to worry about this yet? I already have my plan in place. It's not time to put the plan in place.
Yeah.
Right. And then so what you tell yourself around that fear is important instead of continuing to let it snowball.
Which most people do, unfortunately.
Sure.
They keep pushing until they have to.
Yeah.
I feel like that's almost human nature.
It is human nature.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. But that's where like putting your fears down, like literally writing out what you would do if those things happen and then put it away.
Yeah.
You would never do a complex math problem in your head. You would write it out. Same type of thing.
Yeah.
Write it out, get it out of your mind, do a brain dump, come up with your plan if you need it. It's like, what's the fire plan? Like if there's a fire emergency, what's the plan? You don't know that you'll actually have to use it, but if you do, here it is. And so it becomes your own sort of mental fire extinguisher, if you will.
I like that.
Yeah.
And most of the time we have plans for things, but that's good. And like you said, will you survive? Yeah. You're always going to figure it out.
Yeah. And the only thing I would add to that just real briefly is to check in with where you're feeling that stress in your body, because if you're having significant physical anxiety or you can feel your stress physically, then it's going to be hard to think clear until you have either worked that energy off or calmed that energy down.
Sure. And I've experienced that too.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
One of the last couple things I want to touch on, obviously I'm a chiropractor. We deal with a lot of physical ailments, nervous system, things like that. And obviously you're more on the mental side. What's the importance of that connection, would you say? I think it's a huge importance, especially the older I get. I feel like sometimes you can take care of your body, treat it like a temple, but if you're stressed and you're always worried or in a bad mood, it doesn't play out well for people. So what would you say is the importance of it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that was this is one of the reasons why I was so excited to come on this podcast with you, is to bridge these gaps. Because I'm a big believer that our physical healthcare system and our mental healthcare system should never have been separated to begin with. Yeah. They've done everybody a huge disservice by having those things separate.
Yep.
The Bessel's book, The Body Keeps the Score. That's a book on trauma, but it's all about how that shows up in our body and how our body stores unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
Gabor Mate is a doctor, a Canadian physician who's well known for his work in childhood development and addiction. And, one of the things that there's a lot of evidence and research on is, for example, the increase in autoimmune disease, and how as our mental health statistics increase in a negative way, so does our autoimmune diseases. And that plays a factor for so many reasons.
Yeah.
There's lots of research that show that when someone suppresses themselves, meaning they suppress who they are, their emotions, maybe you grew up in a home where it's not okay to feel certain things or express those emotions, or because of society, you're now trying to fit in a certain way or be a certain way, that will lead to things like psoriasis, various autoimmune diseases, and we could go on the list of how many there are, but it will, what we suppress will get expressed in physical ways. And we see that in stress all the time.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of your patients who, and that's not to say that it's solely because of emotional things, there's real like car accidents that happen and people get injured and get sick, but the emotional component is a big component too as well. And so I know Dr. Gabor, one of the things that he'll often ask people when they come in with like a skin disease or a rash or something going on is, what are you worrying about?
Yeah.
What are you suppressing? What emotions have you not been able to get out? That sort of line of questioning, so that your body can release whatever emotions are getting trapped in the system.
Yeah.
Because our immune system and where our emotions are in the brain, they're both linked together.
Yeah. People don't realize you have skin conditions, like you said.
Right.
And most people are like, oh, what did I come in contact with or something?
Exactly.
No, it's your body trying to rid something.
Yes.
Yeah. Kind of cool.
Yeah,
But
it is.
Yeah,
It's fascinating.
It really is, the connection. And like you said, the fact that they divided mental and physical health. I don't know why.
Right. Well, the insurance. Yeah.
That's a whole other podcast.
Right. I don't think either one of us should get on that soapbox.
Yeah, definitely not. I mentioned this to you earlier, and I saw your post on Instagram yesterday, I believe, or within the past few days, and it was something along the lines of your behavior is a shield for fear.
Your behavior is a shield for, something that you're fearing. And I posted that because I wanted people to think about the next time they judge somebody for how they're acting. And to also pay attention to what is it that you do and what are you compensating for?
Yep.
So, because our mind is always trying to protect us. It's a superpower, right? And so when we act certain ways or we see someone act a certain way, it usually comes from or especially if it's a negative, let's say a negative behavior within ourselves that we don't like. Maybe it's like a reaction or response that ends up not being productive or helpful. Maybe it's an angered response doesn't get said or done in a healthy way, or we see something in someone else, like lots of maybe more people who tend to be more narcissistic in nature or are belittling or whatever. For those types of people, when the ego is big, it means that their insecurity is low, because insecurity and ego are inversely correlated. So the lower the self-esteem, the bigger the ego. So they realize that they're compensating,
yeah.
right. Or if I respond in a way that I don't like in myself, that later on I'm like, oh, why did I do that? Well, what was the insecurity? And insecurity and fear are connected, right? What is it, the thing that I fear about how people will think about me? What am I worried about that may or may not happen? And to really dive into that. Because we can make behavioral changes and we can modify ourselves, but we got to address the insecurity and the fear that's underneath there.
Would that be the same approach, like we talked about earlier, how you initially approach clients and begin the conversations? Would that be similar, or would that be like a different type of approach, someone doing like these behaviors?
Sure. I think it's more reflective in like if you're looking at this for yourself, and a lot of that goes back to what is it that I worry that people will think about me? Because that's what we all fear. Right. I'll use myself as an example. The imposter syndrome. I go on to a podcast or somewhere where I'm speaking. Oh God, they're gonna find out I not really know what I'm talking about. I'm not the expert. Like I don't, like. And then my friend John calls it the monkey mind. Like it's just going. And it's being loud and it's in your head. And so then what happens is you over prepare and then you try to be a certain way and you try to make yourself sound a certain way, but it comes across so inauthentic, right? If in that example, it's like, okay, well, what if people thought I was stupid or I wasn't good enough, or, then what would that mean? Yeah. Well, it would mean that they don't really know who I am.
Correct. And who cares? I mean, that's something as I get older, I'm unapologetically myself in the sense that obviously I'm professional. I care to an extent, but I am who I am. I'm about to be 40 years old soon, and I'm not going to be changing much. So it's just one of those.
Exactly, for sure. Well, and then, when with the other example, the person who is on their high horse and they're right and you're wrong and, all of that. I mean, I think the only way to have compassion for people like that sometimes is to recognize that they are so insecure.
Yeah, right. And I've encountered people like that.
Yeah, and so instead of letting that trigger you can lean in with empathy and compassion.
There you go. You know how to almost handle that and kind of reciprocate a
For sure. Yeah.
Well, this was a great conversation. I enjoyed it very much.
Me too.
Very happy you came on, agreed to do this. So pleasure having you on. And
thank you, Jon.
Thanks again. I hope you enjoyed the experience.
Absolutely. I appreciate it so much. And I love the work that you do with your patients. I don't know a ton of doctors who do their own podcast just to help other people in this type of way. I think it's very admirable, and you should be really proud of yourself.
Thank you. That's kind of the goal with this, just kind of show people that even though not everybody's a chiropractor on here, we can all kind of give a little bit of what we offer to people and kind of help them, whether it be mental, physical, you name it. So again, thank you very much.